The Northern Illinois offense is typically dominated by a strong running game, and last year was no exception as they ranked 37th in rushing offense, while the passing offense ranked 105th. We'll get to that strong running game in just a moment, but first let's talk about the quarterbacks. Last year's starter, Rocky Lombardi, has graduated, but they do return last year's top backup in Ethan Hampton, as well as C.J. Jordan, Josh Holst, and they bring in Jalen Macon from Arkansas Pine Bluff and Kenny Luth from American River Junior College. How did that quarterback room look this spring, and kind of how did it shape up?
Very secretive. Hammock likes playing stuff close to or NIU coach Thomas Hammock likes playing stuff very close to the chest. Is very secretive when it comes to injuries, and this is really the first quarterback battle in his tenure here, and he's doing the same thing. He's he says there are three guys that he likes. Okay, who are the three guys? He doesn't say. Now, obviously, you could put it together from the playing time. It clearly looks like Ethan Hampton's probably the starter. Like if you had to choose a starter right now, it would probably be Ethan Hampton, who filled in a little bit for Lombardi over the last 2 years. He's the longtime incumbent. He's going to do his junior year, I want to say. But there's him. But Macon and Luth have been right there in playing time. Luth is kind of a similar skill set. It looks like he's generally been the number 3 guy. Sometimes his leapfrog. Macon is the number 2. Just again going by like the order, and they come into practice and the snaps and everything. Because that's all we have to go by on this. But Macon's really interesting. Like you said, transfer from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He 1 second is making these amazing like throws downfield that no other quarterback on this team is making, and the next second he's he's the only one getting sacked in a non-contact drill or throwing a interception or something. So he seems like a very high risk, high reward type right now. So I think they're still waiting for him to come along a little bit, and that's why it's probably Hampton right now. But as Hammock could be quick to point out, there's still all of the summer and all the fall left to go.
Absolutely. For those that may not be familiar with Ethan Hampton and his playing style, how would you describe that to our listeners?
It's a slur these days, but game manager probably pops into mind. He's able to scramble when he has to, but you're not going to be running a ton of option stuff with him. He can make plays with his feet, but again, you're not going to want to really design anything. He could take the shots, but you want to make sure that they're there. He's not going to be threading the needle between 3 receivers or 3 defenders to find the guy. Yeah. So that's probably his style there. He'll make the plays that he should make and that sort of thing, which if everyone else is doing their jobs, he's the guy that can take advantage of that situation.
Moving on to that strong running game, and they returned just about everyone from a year ago, the key pieces being leading rusher Ontario Brown and top backup Gavin Williams. How did those two look this spring, and what can we expect for them here in 2024?
Yeah, Williams is kind of like, a third down back, and his usage is going to be interesting because in the spring game, they do a showcase. They don't do a game. Everyone else on the planet does a spring game. They don't. They just basically do a practice. So with a little more 11 on 11. But in the game or the practice or the showcase or whatever, Williams was actually on the sidelines. So it was basically Brown, and they actually sat Brown out for a series with the ones. Hammock is very, ever since the injury late in 22 season, Hammock has really tried shifting up the way they do spring practices to try to avoid wear and tear on his players, which is probably a really smart decision. That 2022 season, anyone who was there around the team knows just how high those expectations were, and just how, I guess, crushing the 2-10 or whatever they ended up going that year was. So Brown sat out a series, and so that led Justin, even before the spring showcase throughout. Justin, I want to make sure I say the right name. Justin Lynch has been getting a ton of carries and reps, and he's looking like he could be a factor. The converted quarterback, brother of NIU Heisman legend Jordan Lynch, Heisman candidate legend Jordan Lynch. So he shifted the running back, and technically he was a running back last year. It was not really used a ton. I think he ended up getting a red shirt last year. So definitely this year he seems to be more in play, and that adds a really interesting wrinkle. Not to jump ahead on the list here, but there's a lot of guys who can throw the ball on the field. You got a former quarterback, obviously, in Lynch at running back. When we get to it, Trayvon Rudolph was a high school quarterback, and they haven't shied away from throwing with him, usually on a 2-point conversion type plays. So, you get that with the quarterback. There's definitely the opportunity for some chicanery if they really wanted to.
So with Lynch kind of getting a little part of the mix this year, I believe Ontario Brown and Gavin Williams are out of eligibility next year. Do you think he would be one of those guys to step up for, in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this year he'll shed a lot to see if he could be, a number one. He seems a lot more like a situational. And it is weird to say, but he almost seems like a fullback type. And Hammock loves himself a fullback. So a lot of the success in 2021 was behind Clint Rakovich, who I think still in the NFL. He may still be with the Falcons, I think. But a lot of that success in 2021 he was a big part of it. And I know he's been trying to replicate that since, and Lynch could be a part of that. Jalen Poe is another guy in there. I think he's a redshirt freshman, I want to say. He's gotten, obviously, a lot of the number 2 reps. Of course, that's pretty much, those are the 4 running backs they've had in camp. That's pretty much it. But no, there have been a couple others, but those are like the 4 main guys. And Poe, probably isn't going to see the most playing time this year, barring an injury, but he's probably the guy who's like the guy for the future. If obviously the giant asterisk these days is if
Absolutely. The Huskies suffered a few losses at wide receiver with Casper Rutkowicz and Davis Patterson graduating and Billy Dozier transferring, but they do return their top 2 wide receivers in 2023. You mentioned one of those earlier, Trayvon Rudolph and Grayson Barnes. They also bring in Kenji Lewis, coming also from Arkansas Pine Bluff. Kind of how did those guys look this spring, and do you think anyone can kind of crack the starting rotation this year? New.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with Barnes because he's listed as a wide receiver, but they play him at tight end. I mean, he's bulked up. They're expecting to use him, as a tight end, a lot more in blocking schemes than they did last year. I mean, essentially, practically, he's a wide receiver, but technically, so he may shift more towards receiver, which is also kind of interesting from the standpoint that they're not super deep with guys with experience. I mean, obviously Rudolph, he had that breakout 2021 year where he had like 800, or I don't even need to exaggerate, it's like 350 yards against one of the Michigans. I want to say Western, or he, one of the best single game NCAA marks of all time. And, was injured the following year and wasn't bad last year, but he wasn't, obviously even approaching the heights that he hit in 2021. So to see how he elevates is going to be interesting. But behind him, there's just a lot of question marks, a lot of high upside guys that Hammock's been talking about for a while, like Sean Pipkin. Hammock says he's ready to make a breakout. He's been saying that for a couple of years, so it'll be interesting to see what he does. He made some plays throughout the practices and everything. You know, he really has the ability to elevate. Jalen Johnson is a local-ish product from Aurora. He has a huge frame. He missed a lot of time with injury, but he's been healthy the last couple of years. So him and Pipkin are both redshirt sophomores. They probably are in the mix, you know, those high upside guys that have shown flashes at points. And if they put it all together with whoever the quarterback is, you know, it's a lot of question marks, but you know, it's that's the name of the game with this passing game. Should also point out that Andrew McElroy from St. Thomas, a transfer, he didn't exactly have like the biggest spring. You know, he made plays here and there, but he had a breakout in the spring showcase. The offense didn't exactly have a lot of touchdowns, and he came in and he made an amazing play. In fact, I think it was on the drive without Ontario Brown. He made an amazing sideline catch, just dove, totally extended out to get it, because I want to say it was from Hampton. I think it was with the ones. And then he got the touchdown, which the offense only managed two offensive touchdowns. Or, yeah, the offense only managed two touchdowns, you know, which they also gave up two touchdowns. So
not good.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, if you're an IU or an NIU fan, you're hoping that it's the defense that is that good, which, again, spoiler alert, we'll get to that in a minute. But if you're an NIU fan, you're kind of in the mindset, well, the defense is that good, and, you know, the offense isn't going to have to face – most defenses they face aren't going to be of this level. So, or at least, you know, MAC defenses aren't
sure
this level. That's the hope. Time will tell on that one, though.
So in 2023, Chris Carter led the tight end group in receptions with 12 catches on 21 targets for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. You talked about Grayson Barnes kind of working in that tight end group. How did that group look this spring, and can we expect something similar, or with Grayson Barnes there and that kind of hybrid maybe type look, what do you expect in 2024?
Yeah, you take Barnes out of the mix. You know, if you take Barnes out of the mix, you know, Carter and Tristan Taves are both guys. They go deep at tight end. They got a lot of guys that each bring something to the table. Taves has been here. I was surprised he still had eligibility. I thought he was done. I think he had a medical red shirt at some point, in addition to the COVID year. So he's made plays in big game situations for this team in the past. Carter, there's a lot of potential with Carter. He's 6, I want to say 7, 6'8". You know, it's been hard with a rhythm with the quarterbacks. Him establishing one, it looks like, you know, when you see it in practice, like I said, he's 6'7", 6'8". I think the quarterbacks think he's 6'9" or 6'10", because it seems like every pass to him just goes like an inch over his head. So if that smooths out, he could be a little more, like I said, in the mix. And, you know, however you want to consider Barnes, he's probably the main target among that group. But also, if you put him in tight end, they kind of dilapidate your wide receivers. So
the offensive line loses 2 starters, and Nolan Potter to graduation and Pete Nigra over to transfer to Louisville. But they do return J.J. Lepay, John Champ, and Elvin McCor, who were starters in 2023, as well as top backups Drew Hoff, Logan Schmitz, Evan Buss, and others. Kind of how did the offensive line look this spring, and do you think they're going to, you know, continue the tradition of that strong running game Northern Illinois has?
Yeah, and should point out that Zernitz and Buss are basically starters. Both were hurt last year, like a lot, and they're pretty much starters. I think Zernitz is moving to center. I think he's going to be the center this year, if I'm remembering right. So yeah, no, the line, you know, should be as good as it's been. I mean, it's, you know, it's always a strange alchemy with the chemistry of offensive line, but you know, barring something really weird, this group should be as good as it was last year. You hope that sacks were an issue at time last year. That's not all on the offensive line. You hope the pass blocking steps up a little bit, but you know, run blocking obviously definitely their forte. They did a good job, and it looks like they're, it was really hard because, like I said, a lot of stuff this spring's non-contact. So they are like contact. They look out for your teammates. That was definitely the message that Hammock and the coaching staff were trying to get imparted onto them. Because again, they're since 22, they're definitely paranoid about injuries, and that then obviously kind of it's hard to gauge, especially an offensive line. But yeah, no, it should be on par or even ahead of where it was last year.
If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
It's a tough one because there's really only like two top level guys. There's Brown and there's Rudolph. If you say a quarterback, you don't even know who the starter is going to be. And I don't necessarily know that Hampton's like the breakout type guy. I mean, he'll be a good starter, but I'm going with Rudolph on this one because I mean, as much as potentially as he showed, he hasn't always necessarily done it game in, game out over the course of all season. If he's able to do that, regardless of who the quarterback is, and there's stuff as a receiver where he can improve most notably, and this is something Hammock has said he wanted to see across the board, is more making something happen after the catch. So if that yards after reception, the yak can get up for him, and he starts making plays because again, they don't go downfield. They don't take a lot of big home run shots. It's a lot of short passes and then hoping the receiver makes something happen. And if Rudolph, all the skills are there. So if he could put that together and start making, the 5 or 6 yard passes into, 12, 15, 20 yard gains, that's what takes his game to the next level. That's what gets him over 1,000 yards. And if that happens, that's going to be a very good year for this team.